right, now we're ready. Okay, so please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name's Leo Elstob. I record music and do various other things as Leo Zero.
Okay.
And right now I'm in my recording studio, which is a little tiny box room in North London, Tufnell Park, which is, people will know Camden Town, so we're kind of north of Camden Town, about a mile.
Okay, so you're in North London. I'm across from the ocean at the beach in San Francisco, California. Less than a mile from the Golden Gate Bridge.
Well, lucky you. We had some snow this morning, so we're a bit chilly and wet here as usual.
Okay, so would you consider yourself a musician?
You know what? I'm a collage artist.
Oh,
I do collage with music, and I do collage with, bits and bobs like things I've found and photoshopped and what have you. But essentially, there's very little difference between my music work and my graphic art work.
So those two artistic disciplines bleed together for you.
Yeah, I'm kind of someone who's at home with starting with some found objects, or in the case of my music work, my bread and butter is remixing, which is useful to me because, one, I'm not a trained musician, so I can't sit down and very easily, although the computer can help these days a lot, I can't sit down and write a tune very easily from scratch. I don't have the skill set for sitting down and writing songs at my guitar or at the keyboard.
Right.
But what I can do is take, whenever I hear other people's music or I have other people's music in their component parts, I can kind of get stuck in and mess with it and do my take on things. So that is really my job and what I spend most of my time doing, which is remixing.
Okay.
Stuff.
Okay.
But it's like collaging. It's like building Lego bricks out of sound, really, and kind of chopping and changing things.
So it seems like creative process is similar with music and with two-dimensional medium for you.
Yeah, I studied at art school and learned Photoshop, and it was a real, when I basically learned the ropes with music production from a guy who was a year above me at graphic design college, and the Photoshop sort of Macintosh skills with graphic design were a really good primer for all the sampling and chopping things up with music. So it was a real good, easy step from one to the other.
Okay. So you and I have a mutual friend, Hugh, who is a colleague of mine at the Association for Corporate Growth. I can assure you I'm the only artist in the group, which gives me a great advantage. And so obviously in that context, I talk about business and I look for sponsors for a program that I have. So he and I were chatting, we were having coffee in the financial district in San Francisco, and he mentioned you. And so I have my creative endeavor, which is fine art painting, but I also have a blog called Artists Who Thrive, and I'm actually developing an online business course for artists. And so your name came up because it sounded like you came to a point where you made a dramatic shift. And he said that you were working, and you can straighten out the story if he didn't get it right, but he said that you had some music that got some serious radio play and you didn't get paid, and you at one time didn't have much control or the same level of control you have over your brand and your business, and that you started a meditation practice. So yeah. I also have a meditation practice, and I've done neurofeedback extensively since I started painting. So got curious about you because I think there's a link to it's in your story. Sounds like, in essence, you started a meditation practice and you took back your power in terms of your business and your
absolutely. Yeah.
And that fascinated me because that's actually something that I can relate to. So that's really what I want on this call, which is about like less than 30 minutes. I just want to talk to you about that shift that occurred for you, and how it changed your approach to business. We've learned about your creative process, so that's what I'd like to ask you about. So tell me what happened. Was that a situation that happened? You had some radio play and you didn't get paid?
Well, I got ripped off pretty much around every corner in the music industry. There's someone ready to rip you off. And you can kind of most of the people I've met in music fall into a couple of camps. They're either pretty hardcore. The ones that make a lot of money tend to be pretty much about doing deals and brand building, and they're very savvy with interfacing with their market, and they play the web promotion game, play the whole promotion game very well. And previously I'd always been a backroom kind of guy and was always a sort of part of a team, interested in being a kind of craftsman rather than someone stealing the limelight. And I come from a sort of background of DJing from an early age. So I was DJing since about 15 years old and did it professionally pretty early on. Like in my late teens I started doing it professionally, and I've done it ever since. So I've been a reluctant person on stage and a performer, and that all of that stuff really got sorted out a few years ago after having been in lots of teams that were very loosely set up, as a band or as a bunch of guys who would run nightclub events or lots of creative pursuits, running record labels and things like that. And when success looms in the music game, you kind of have these great spikes of income where you have a hit record.
Right.
Hopefully you have a hit record.
Yeah.
Which have had, luckily. And with it comes this sort of swarming of people who are maybe not so trustworthy, people who want to, see your kind of, you as someone who's could be lucrative if they hooked up with you and maybe manipulated the situation, what have you.
So you get hangers on. Is that what happens when you get a hit?
Yeah, you get a lot of management people who most of them are kind of, I don't know whether you have the term wide boy in the States, but people that have got a lot of talk but aren't necessarily skilled themselves in much other than doing the talk and hooking things up, and that's all well and good.
I think that's Hollywood. That's most.
Yeah. Similar vibe, and I've kind of seen where I fit into that, and I'm an easygoing guy. I like doing the work as much as I like the work to be successful or well received. Doing it is as much of a reward for me. So. And I've met a lot of other people like that. I've learned from those people. I've shadowed sort of studio engineers who are amazingly talented, worked with all the top people, but have shunned the limelight and aren't really interested in the money. And as a result, the natural course of things is people with bigger egos and bigger, different intentions kind of muscle in on your space. And unfortunately, they can muscle in on your intellectual property too. So that's
what happened to you. So what was the name of your hit?
I had a hit with a band called Chicane, which I set up with the guy who I was at art college with. And that was an early kind of brush with commercial success. And we went on tour in Germany and we had a hit sort of globally, I suppose. So we did deals in every different country and what have you. And there was a definite fork in the road where I was in my early 20s and I was immersed in a music scene. I was immersed in the house music scene, and the dance music scene as we know it now really was just emerging, and I was in the thick of it. And the pull for me was to be in with all these people I liked, and I liked their company, and I liked DJing and running clubs and what have you. And I had this fork in the road where what was presented to me was, we've got a pop group here that we can take and sell down the river. And I decided at that point to jump ship, which was...
So you saw the writing on the wall. You saw that the management people that you referred to in this one camp were people with ill intention. Or maybe not, your intention was, maybe your interests were not going to be represented very well.
there was a certain commercialism involved in taking it where they wanted to go, which I wasn't prepared to do. I was young and sort of wanting to be kind of underground and doing a sort of style of music that was sort of willfully underground and in a cool kind of dance music enclave, as it were. And that's something that was, you know, it was a time of life, and I was involved in a kind of a music scene. But really, there were. It's happened time and time again. Whenever there's sort of commercial success, you just sort of have to battle with egos, you know. And I battle with sort of having a big ego. I think anybody you know personally, but when it comes to battling with other people in a team, there's often really only room for one person to manage the thing and run it.
So explain to me. So you had. So how did the benefit or the income from your intellectual property? How did that get wrestled out of your hands? How were you cut out of the deal?
Well, it's extremely complicated how music royalties work. You have the recording copyright, which is the actual recording that you make when you make a song. You have the publishing copyright, which is the written down words of the song, and the sort of what can come from that is income from when it's played on the radio or when it's covered by somebody else. There's also royalties that come in from people performing the song when you do it live. All sorts of income streams that, if you don't know about it, often other people are ferreting it away on your behalf and funneling it in different directions. And it's really taken me lots of book reading, lots of consulting with lawyers and you know, learning the hard way to realise just how you manage your property if you've got a portfolio of songs.
Right.
And really most people out there, when they write songs, often they're pretty young and then they're sort of swept up in the sort of fun of it all. And really anybody who writes songs and wants to make money out of their material, you need to do your homework. And most people don't come to it. Most people come to it by finding out the hard way.
Right. So,
and I think that's what happened to me. So I had a hit record, and then you work out that okay, well, in every country you get a royalty collection agency, and this, if you have a hit record, it's a kind of rolling income that you've got to manage. Lots of songs and things get written where nobody really defines who owns what.
So what would you consider, or did you ever calculate the loss, the amount?
No, I just had an indication from my whole experience in the industry. You know, I worked with loads of singers. I was always someone who wanted to help other people who were obviously in the same boat that I had been in.
Right.
Every time I work with a new singer, I explain it to them. Every time I work with a huge amount of session players, so keyboard players and guitarists and whatever, and it's absolutely frightening how little people know. You know, it took me like 4 reads of a book called Music Publishing Made Easy, you know, before I got my head around it.
It wasn't very easy. The title wasn't accurate. Sounds like.
It's just that and what you find, and what's very interesting is you do deals with people. I suppose it's similar to the sort of high-end banking deals that can be done where things can be quite fishy. They're very complicated, but, you know, people are guarded about what is actually going on with certain deals. You know, people in business, because it's the golden goose, it's kind of where the good money is. And whenever you talk about, you do a record deal, and then you go up and you do a publishing deal, and people would get cagey. And there was often a lot of people that in quite lofty A&R jobs at record companies and what have you, who were actually bluffing their way through, didn't know the nitty-gritty of it. And I was like, this is interesting. Every time we talk about publishing, people kind of change their
demeanor.
You know, change everything. You're like, this is interesting. This is where the real money is, and this is where the real savvy businessmen who are making big money have done their homework. So I made it my job to kind of find out about it. Now I have my own publishing company.
Awesome.
And I understand how it works, and I'm in the business now because the music industry is in free fall in the realms of selling CDs. Or I sell CDs, I sell vinyl as well. Vinyl's quite good because it's a little kind of...
a little niche.
Market.
Yeah, I used to work for a music distribution company, so I understand how the industry shifted, and Napster kicked it off quite well with their illegal electronic distribution of music. Let me ask you this. So what I'd like to talk about, because I don't want to take too much of your precious time. I want to know, you had these realizations that people were acting on their own interests and not really caring much for yours, and you obviously had a moment of realization, and you said you started a meditation practice, and I'm curious to know why or when that happened and how things started to shift as a result of that. What shifted within you?
I got pretty depressed in about 2002. So, just over 10 years ago, and I went to the doctor and said, I just feel really terrible, feel really down, and blah, blah, and he sort of said, well, it sounds like you're in a depressed state, you've had a lot of stress, which I had, and I found myself working for a lot of people. I've always worked freelance, so I've done record sleeves for people, I've been a magazine publisher, like independent magazine publisher, I've been this, that, and the other, and I value other people who are quite hard taskmasters. I kind of work well under that, but also I can get kind of overwhelmed and overpromise to people and underdeliver, and then you find yourself with a list of to-dos that you possibly can't sort of finish.
Right.
And it stressed me out and got me depressed. And I got to that point, 2002, and then I decided that medication wasn't for me. It was going to be kind of talking therapy or me basically sorting myself out. And I'd already kind of read a lot of self-help books, and I suppose that was my sort of 30th birthday, and I was kind of going through a kind of transition. I didn't own a property, and I was kind of worried about, whether I was going to support myself in the music industry long term, and, all those things. So right. I did a bit of soul searching, and after reading lots of books, I got better, and I was kind of more self-aware. And I suppose I kind of started meditating in my own way, previously going and doing a property transcendental meditation course. But I did a course quite a lot later, about 5 years ago, and it was the London Meditation Centre, and I went for a weekend course and was really hoping for sort of a boost in confidence and a boost in clarity and a boost in sort of focus and concentration and believing in myself and kind of following through with my own. Because I've always got lots of projects. I'm a very ideas-rich person, but I'm not such a good finisher.
Yeah, that's a familiar pattern with a lot of creative people, is that ideas are easy. Execution, that's another story. So you had very clear intentions before you started this meditation program. You wanted clarity and confidence, and so you had these intentions, and then what happened? How did it affect you, and how did it affect your business?
Well, what was nice about what I learned was, I think I was quite arrogant about it as well, because I kind of took it and did it my way. So I sort of meditate for an hour every morning, and I was taught, it was more useful to sort of do 20 minutes twice daily. And as I've learned the normal, I suppose the bog standard sort of TM meditation. It's nothing to do with sort of breathing or specific sort of yoga affiliated stuff. It's just really you kind of quieten your brain down by saying a mantra, and you say the mantra vocally, you say it sort of quietly in your mind, and then you reduce the sort of level of that, so it's just a sort of murmur, even a thought murmur as it were, and then really you're away. And I found rather than doing it twice daily, I do it in the morning once an hour, for an hour in the morning, and that's it. And it sort of gave me the confidence, made me kind of know myself more. I found myself doing things that I put off for years and getting things done that were very hard for me to do, like writing my own album and releasing a kind of solo album, or an album where I was the artist. And I had an art show, and you know, when in the past things would have been, hey, I really want to do that, but I'm bottled out, or some other person's project, you know, took precedent over what my burning heart's desire was, because I didn't really have the sort of strength of will to kind of pursue it. Those things changed, and now I'm much more my own man. So I now keep it. I don't do it every day, I have to say, but I do it most days, and I feel cranky if I haven't done it for 3 days or so. So it's like, for me, it's like going to the gym for my brain, but it's more important than that. It's kind of it's just fundamental to me being, you know, comfortable in my own skin now.
Right. So I understand the benefits of meditation, and it's interesting because you know, in the context of business, people are, oh, what are you talking about meditation for? How are they in any way related? How could they, you know, that's completely separate. But it's really not. And it sounds like that, if we just look strictly at the benefits that you received from a meditation practice, increased confidence and focus, sounds like that was what came of it.
For creative stuff, I meet so many people that aren't confident. People come into the studio quite young, and they're, you know, incredibly talented, and they can sing beautifully, and they can write great songs.
Right.
But they're not confident, and you just want to sort of sit. You want to spend the whole. I personally want to spend the whole time explaining to them that, you know, if you sat down and wrote a song, you can't have been shy when you wrote it. You know, you must have at some point thought, this is a great song, I love this, you know, this is, I'm doing something good here. Even if you're feeling like you're a channel from, you know, the Lord's giving me this creative stuff or whatever it is. You know, for me personally, when I do stuff, I'm pretty arrogant. You know, I sit there and I go, oh, this is a great track, I really like this. And that may dissipate, and I have to watch it, and I have to stand up and be counted and put my music out there, and, you know, I have to work at that.
But is that arrogance, or is that just the state of confidence you need to be in order to execute creatively? And not just creatively, but it's also the same state, my belief is, you have to be in that same state of confidence in order to transact business. No one's going to exchange money for your service or your good if you're all shy and sheepish and shaky. You really have to have confidence in both realms. And confidence is a healthy thing. It's not an ego thing. I think it's healthy. There's a healthy confidence, and then there's the overconfidence and overbearingness that probably a lot of those big egos you encountered in the music industry had. But there's a health around it, don't you think, that helps you execute, helps you grow and manage your business and your creativity?
If it's coming from the right place, people warm to it. If it's coming from the wrong place, people know.
Right.
You know? And it's what you said, that you exactly hit the nail on the head with what I meant with the kids that were coming in. You know, at some point they had the confidence, and then it dissipates.
Right. They lost it.
Stage, or when they're having to be public facing, or they're having to go and sell. The fruit, they've laboured so, passionately about something, and when they have to turn it into an album or say it's finished and here it is world, I think fear comes in, and then you get into this other sort of territory, which I'm sure you're aware of, which is, I think, things are basically boil down to, activities boil down to whether they're coming from a place of fear or love, and
yes,
confidence. It's one of the two. So if someone's selling you something and they're doing it without that honesty, and
you sense it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know who to credit this, but phrase to, but it's something like everyone knows your secrets. So if you're not coming from a place of honest intention and righteous confidence, people can sense it. And even if they're not able to sense it consciously immediately, they can sense it. It's interesting that you mentioned this, because I just got an update from an artist who's a painter, who I'm coaching. The artist I coach on Mondays, are required to send a weekly update. And in her update, she said that she was very reluctant to make some important business phone calls, and she was scared, and she acknowledged that. She wasn't feeling very confident, and she acknowledged that. And so she decided to meditate before she picked up the phone, as her mentor told her to do. And she had successful calls, and she secured meetings. So this is why I thought your story was very interesting, because I relate to it, because I think there are these extraordinary benefits that come from a mindfulness practice that translate into creative process and into the business world. And I also think it helps you attract relationships and business partners and patrons who resonate with you versus ones who maybe don't have your interests in mind. Or you're able to, my experience has been I've been able to detect quickly when someone is not coming from the right place, and I have no bones about leaving that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, you get more instinctive, you
yeah,
get more trusting of your instincts, and that is, if you take
that's
the
huge.
whole sort of spiritual journey I've had, which, you know, you start with meditation and you get into trusting your instinct, you trust your heart over your head a lot more.
Yes.
All that stuff comes as sort of part of a progression that I've had, where I know instinctively that that's where I'm heading. It's kind of, I'm going to be an intuitive person who, there's a lot of stuff now, things that I sit on, like I'll have a project and it'll end up getting sort of stuck a bit. And in the past I would have very much worried about it. Now I'm almost like, that's stuck for a reason and I'm going to focus on something else.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get a bad vibe about something, equally there are good vibes I get about things that are far better. So the thing, you know, it's sort of, lots of things get left in sort of neutral, and lots of things get acted upon very quickly because the feeling's right. I just hooked up with a person, and they're serendipitous and they're spooky, and I use the word spooky more often now than I ever have done. For example, just yesterday, I was checking out a guy who's a new producer, who's very much kind of having his moment in the sun, great musician, and I was listening to his stuff, body of work, going, wow, this guy's just on fire. And then the next day, I get a Facebook friend request from him going, hi, blah blah blah, I got one of your tracks, I need one of these things. And it's like, okay, well, that's either me being honest and sort of moving in the right circles or whatever, or, you know, it's just better things happen when you're coming from the right place, and business and creative stuff runs more smoothly.
Yes.
It takes a bit getting used to, because you definitely have to operate in a different way. Like I said, things that, you know, people are annoyed with me because things aren't finished and certain things aren't, you know, all regimented, work done in a regimented way. But I know in my heart there's reason for that, and there's sort of focus of where I should be working. And another thing is the people that I really rate and who I admire, they all seem to work that way. They don't work in the regimented, you know, if you just tick all the boxes and fill out all your to-do list, you'll get there. It's not that simple. It's much more instinct involved. So
you find that you attract people who are more, well, like attracts like, and so it sounds like you're open to. There's a friend of mine who is a business author and blogger here in the United States, Jonathan Fields. He has this. He's doing this amazing project called the Good Life Project, and he's going all around the country interviewing people who have created a good life for themselves and who are often entrepreneurs. And I had the good fortune of being interviewed. And he's got this statement that he's written called The 10 Commandments of Biz. And the first line, it reminds me of what you were just talking about. And the first line in the 10 Commandments of Biz for the Good Life Project is, thou shall have a strategy, but be open to serendipity.
Yeah.
And the last line of it actually the last two lines, and I'll share this on Artists Who Thrive. The last two lines are, "Thou shalt exalt love as a business ideal. Thou shalt lead with service and soul," which is very interesting, and very interesting commandment and way of thinking about business. And it sounds as if that's where you're coming from, and it sounds as if your mindfulness practice has taken you that way.
I've nailed my colours to that flag or whatever, I've said that's how I want to run my life. I'm no millionaire yet. I'm not really interested in being a millionaire. I'm interested in being successful. I definitely know that. But money's a kind of device for me to have freedom and to do good fun projects. It's nothing more than that.
Right.
But I haven't made the money yet. But I believe in that philosophy, and it's just true because the amount of separate people who have come to that conclusion from all different sort of backgrounds, that there's some kind of need to be honest and giving if you want to get anywhere. You've got to be thankful, you've got to be grateful, and you've got to be human about it.
Right. Well, you do business with other humans. We can't lose sight of that, right? You're not doing business with robots. You're doing it with other souls, and you have to be of service. So obviously you've made some money. You've got businesses going. You've made, but maybe it's not millions, but you're doing well enough. We have to say, right?
To be doing what I'm doing, which is basically having fun playing with loads of gadgets and in my recording studio with all my toys, and making enough to continue doing that.
That's pretty good.
For me, is wow.
Right.
I'd love to expand on that and do more projects and have a bit more freedom. And I do have to have bills to pay, and I do have to be disciplined about what I spend my time on. But that in itself is quite a fun occupation. I have a very good manager who I've had for the last 3 years, who's really brought the same. So he's having someone else who's got exactly the same mentality that, whatever gets thrown at us with an imploding music industry, we wriggle out of the way of it and find some other activity. So that's quite fun, and that's I'll continue to do that. And success. I'm kind of happy that I'm doing what I'm doing. So I feel successful already.
What's the name of your publishing company?
That is Moving Music Publishing.
Moving Music Publishing. And what if someone wants to check out your work, what website would you direct them to?
You go to leozero.com.
Leo Zero, is zero spelled out?
Spelled out, so it's LEOZERO.com.
So for all you Americans, Z is Z.
Z, sorry, yeah.
Well, this actually is going to be broadcast through a number of nations, so I want to thank you very much, Leo, for your time and for your willingness to be open and share your journey and how you came to where you're at. And the fact is that most artists, any artist who's actually supporting themselves well enough is outside of the norm. So. But on the other hand, it's possible. And I think that everyone arrives at that place in a different way. And I just appreciate you sharing how you got there. Because it sounds like you had to take a pretty rocky journey and get depressed and build yourself back up. And it's very similar to my story. So thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate it. And let me know if you're in San Francisco anytime soon or visiting Hugh.
Going to visit Hugh, and it would be lovely to meet you in person.
Okay, yeah, let me know.
I'm going to check out the rest of your website now and the rest of the interviews, because I just checked one out earlier and it's really great. So
great.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thank
you.
So much. Thank you very much. All right, take care. Cheers. Bye.